Hello, welcome to the morning news. Teachers in the southern Mexican state of Oaxaca have vowed to block the local elections next Sunday. Protesting teachers set fire to an office of the Electoral Institute and burned electoral material.
They raided offices of the National Electoral Institute in various places across the state and burned ballots and other materials. In Oaxaca City, the teachers also set fire to electoral documents and empty boxes outside the INE offices. The messages, electoral boycott and general strike, were painted on the walls outside the offices.
We're going to permanently and indefinitely take hold of the 11 district offices in the state, as agreed during our state assembly. We're not going to allow material to be taken in or out in these spaces.
Electoral authorities have not yet confirmed whether destroyed electoral material will be replaced. Lorenzo Cordova, the president of the National Electoral Institute, said the government won't install voting stations if they are blocked from doing so. We can't do anything about that. We have to take all the precautions we can, within our possibility, if it's possible to set up voting stations. If it's not possible, then it's not possible. Local elections will be held in various states across Mexico. So far, tension is increasing and also notable in Guerrero, where the 43 Ayotzinapa students were forcibly disappeared in September 26. Activists, supporters and families of the victims have called for cancellation of the vote and have said they would not allow for elections to take place in the violent state.
With less than a week to go before regional elections in Mexico, political violence and gang activity are making the prospects of a successful democratic process more and more unlikely. 8 candidates have been murdered since campaigning began in early March. Many candidates have resigned for fear of being victimized by organized crime. The atmosphere has led many to speculate that the electoral process will be marred by abstention and further violence. Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto has made changes to his declaration of assets. It follows a Reuters report that cast doubt on how he acquired one of his properties. Peña Nieto released the annual update to this declaration of assets late on Sunday, days after a report showed he purchased a 1,000 square meter plot of land in the town of Valle de Bravo that he has declared as a donation from his late father. Lawmakers have demanded Peña Nieto to make a full declaration of his assets, which totaled at least $3 million. The trial against former Chief of Intelligence Miguel MAZA has begun in Colombia's highest court. MAZA is suspected to have played a part in the assassination of left-leaning presidential candidate Luis Carlos GALAN'S in 1889, which was a favorite to win the election. Miguel MAZA is accused of receiving bribes to reduce the number of bodyguards on GALAN'S security detail the day he was riddled with bullets by cartel members under the order of drug trafficker Pablo Escobar. GALAN'S is remembered for opposing the growing powers of drug cartels and for his left-leaning proposals. As the issue of victims and justice continues to be widely discussed in Colombia's peace negotiations in Havana, experts are drawing attention to the importance of understanding justice in its full complexity. Our correspondent Natalia Margarita explains.
Compensation, guarantees of non-repetition, truth, and acknowledgement of responsibility from the perpetrators are among the rights of victims within the frame of transitional justice. That, as according to renowned jurist Gustavo Gallón, who believes the discussion on justice in Colombia has been wrongly reduced to the issue of prison sanctions.
What initially is important to ask is not whether prison terms are going to be applied or not, but rather if there's going to be recognition of the damages, forgiveness asked for, and a serious compensation offer for the victims. As long as that is guaranteed, it is possible to have flexibility in the sanctions.
For lawyer and member of the Historical Commission for the Conflict, Victor Moncayo, the issue of justice that's been widely discussed in Havana necessarily implies an agreement on the nature of Colombia's internal conflict, as well as the recognition of the complexity of factors that have played a role on it.
Now from that point we can start talking about the resulting responsibilities, and among those responsibilities are of course the ones of armed organizations, but also the ones of state agents and state apparatuses.
Since 2008, Luz Marina has been waiting for the state to acknowledge its responsibility over the murder of her 26-year-old son, whose body was then presented in rebel uniform as having been killed in combat by the army. 5,700 young poor men have been extrajudicially killed in order to boost combat kill rates in what is known as the false positive scandal.
In order to speak about transitional justice, I believe the state should first acknowledge its human rights violations, and mainly and foremost that it also bears responsibility for victims that are from the state and not from the insurgency groups.
Luz Marina is just one face of the many victims for whom justice, in the wake of the ongoing peace process, must start with truth clarification and the recognition of the crimes that all actors have committed over the course of more than 50 years of war. Natalia Margarita, Telesur, Bogotá, Colombia.
Thousands of teachers took to the streets of Santiago, Chile to express their rejection of an education bill currently being debated in Congress. The march marked the first day of an indefinite strike called by the teachers' union. They are demanding changes in key aspects to the bill that has been promoted by President Michelle Bachelet. Among other elements, teachers object to the implementation of certification exams and say the salary levels in the plan are too low. President Salvador Sánchez Serén is marking 1 year in office. Since the ruling party FMLN has been in power, levels of illiteracy have dropped considerably. The current government has also invested in providing basic school supplies, including shoes and uniforms, to every student in the country. Sánchez Serén, a former guerrilla commander, served as a vice president for his predecessor Mauricio Funes, who broke 20 years of right-wing rule since his election in 2009.
Hace un año recibí la banda presidencial con humildad.
A year ago, I received the presidential sash with humility. I present to you some phrases that sum up this first year in office. First, I will exercise the presidency with honesty, austerity, efficiency, and transparency. And secondly, I will work tirelessly to achieve the great agreements that will allow our nation to resolve the main problems that it faces.
Over 3,000 rescuers survived bad weather as they search for more than 400 people missing after a ship capsized on the Yangtze River in what was likely China's worst shipping disaster in almost 70 years. Divers and other rescue workers have tried to reach people they found trapped in the upturned hull of the Eastern Star, which transported tourists, most of them elderly. 5 bodies have been recovered, and so far about a dozen people have been rescued. It is yet unclear why the boat capsized, but the captain has already been detained for questioning. Russia said any UN Security Council resolution allowing for the use of force in the Mediterranean to stop gangs smuggling migrants must define with precision the powers of an EU naval mission if it's to win Moscow's backing. This is in response to the European Union agreement regarding the mission to target gangs bringing people from Libya as part of a plan to deal with the growing influx of migrants to the bloc. The accord requires a UN mandate to be able to intervene in Libyan territorial waters.
If such a proposal is made, we will have to write down in the most minute detail the mandate of such a mission under Chapter 7, because we don't want a repeat of the ambiguity that was used for gross abuse of the Libya resolution adopted in 2011.
Despite the expiration of 3 provisions in the U.S. Patriot Act, the Obama administration has maintained the NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden should still face prosecution. The Surveillance Act provisions expire largely due to the revelations made by Snowden, a former national security agent and analyst who is still exiled in Russia. Snowden revealed the controversial NSA program that gathered and stored Americans' phone records and emails in bulk. This practice was declared illegal by the U.S. Federal Appeals Court in May. Greece said it has sent its creditors a comprehensive and realistic package of reforms for consideration and is calling on Europe's leaders to accept it so a long-awaited deal can be struck. But Greece's counterparts in the talks has said the new package has no new concessions. The government of Alexis Tsipras says its creditors are not asking for reforms, but rather are insisting they implement austerity measures. Without a deal, Athens risks a default for bankruptcy in weeks, which, according to a German high official, it would have grave consequences for the rest of Europe.
I think it's absolutely right that Germany and France are making another attempt to come to a solution, because of the political consequences of a Greek bankruptcy in the Eurozone will be, of course, be gigantic.
In the next hours, a jury in Los Angeles will begin deliberating in the case of a black unarmed woman who was repeatedly kicked by a white policewoman. Alicia Thomas screamed, "I can't breathe," and shortly after died. The policewoman, Mary Callahan, has been charged with assault and could face up to 3 years in prison if convicted. A few hours later, in New York, it was reported that the 50-year-old unarmed black man who was tasered by a police officer has died. Police say he attacked officers before being tasered. David was a Marine veteran, a father of 6, and a grandfather of 11. And we continue with coverage of the corruption scandal affecting FIFA. U.S. prosecutors believe President Sepp Blatter's top lieutenant Jerome Bovacuk made $10 million in bank transactions that are central to bribery investigation of the World Football Body.
Falk, FIFA Secretary General, is described in a federal court indictment as an unidentified high-ranking FIFA official who in 2008 transferred the sum to then FIFA Vice President Jack Warner. Falk has not yet been formally accused. Warner is among 14 FIFA officials and corporate executives who will face trial in the US for running a criminal enterprise that involved more than $150 million in bribes.
It was definitely for all of us, I think, a very difficult time what happened these last 48 hours, no question about that.
The former head of the Brazilian Football Confederation, Ricardo Teixeira, is facing charges of money laundering and tax evasion as part of the FIFA corruption scandal. Teixeira's successor as president of the CBF Federation, José María Marín, was arrested May the 27th by the Swiss police along with 6 other executives of FIFA on indictments for corruption brought by US authorities. Teixeira has yet to be indicted by a judge. In 2012, Teixeira left the CBF among accusations of taking bribes from a sports marketing firm. He denied the allegations and was not formally charged.
More on these on our website, telesur.tv.net/English. Thank you for watching and have a good day.